Hello, I'm Jamie Boone, and today I'll be interviewing Connor Vanecek, who is the chairman of the Hutto Baha'i group. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'm interviewing you because I don't know what Baha'i is. Hopefully, this isn't a non-offensive way, but the fuck's up with that? Do you want to give a little bit of a background? I think starting sort of broadly about the Hutto Baha'i group, for example. Is there weekly meetings? What do services or the practice of Baha'i? What does that look like in the modern day? And what does the chairman of the group do?
Well, the first thing is a Baha'i group is an unofficial part of the organized religion as a whole, as in the bottom of okay, so at the local level, it's the local spiritual assembly, and that's the lowest group basically on the totem pole that has authority.
Okay.
In general, and you need like 9 people for that. But we started out with 3 people because we were told that we can do that 3 is just what you need for officers. And I basically had a 1 in 3 shot of getting it.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you were picked. So it wasn't the 3 of you decided which one of you was going to be.
It was only 3 of us, so yeah, it was the 3 of us who chose.
Okay.
Like it was technically it's a secret ballot, but
you were gonna,
1 in 3 shot. So
I was gonna say, yeah. Okay, so you're looking to basically start up like the more official. You said spiritual assembly would be a level if you have 9.
that is one of the goals that we hope to achieve one day.
Okay.
But in general, one of our preferred goals is to help improve the community around us.
Well, I do like the sound of that. So here, that actually lets us sidle into a little bit of this. So can you tell me about how you came to be Baha'i, if that's the right phrase?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. So you weren't raised Baha'i. You converted?
Yes, I was raised both Catholic and Lutheran. Parent from each one.
Okay, because for a second there I was like, that seems, the reason that Lutheran exists is they didn't like the Catholic. But okay, so raised in an interfaith household, as one might say, and then you stumbled across Baha'i on Wikipedia, or
completely on accident. I wasn't even looking for anything related to it. I just saw. I remember hearing something about Ishmael as one of the sons of Abraham, and I looked into it and it said like Jewish view, Christian view, Muslim view, like Baha'i view. Like, I haven't heard of this one. What's that?
Yeah. So what is the Baha'i view, if you remember, as far as is Ishmael the...
He's just one of Abraham's sons. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
The story just goes that Abraham was sent up to like sacrifice one of his, or supposedly to sacrifice, but it doesn't really matter which one because it was just...
Okay. So the Baha'i position doesn't take a side in terms of whether Isaac or Ishmael is the...
It was just, we recognize that they were both sons of Abraham.
Okay. Well, cool. All right. Well, I'm always happy to hear a religion that's less combative generally, and that emphasizes community service. So to that point, and actually to, origins, you stumbled across it on Wikipedia, presumably read more, and then just on your own you converted, or did you find a group or other members of the faith?
Well, the thing was, I found it when I was 19, and I was still living at home, so it was actually some years before I felt... Because if I because over in Taylor, there was no group or anything where I'm from. Yeah. And so I would have to go all the way to Round Rock or Austin just to take part in anything. And the thing is, I couldn't really... It's not more like my parents would just be curious as to where I was going, and I wasn't ready to let them know at the time.
That you didn't truck with this whole Jesus bandwagon.
Well, not necessarily, because the thing is, for Baha'is, it's not a rejection of other message. The best way I can describe it is the Baha'is see that there are multiple messengers sent by God, and that we believe that the founder of our faith and his immediate predecessor are the two most recent ones within the last couple hundred years.
Okay. So, no Pastor Jones or whatever it was, right? He doesn't count as a prophet in Baha'i, which is good to hear.
But we don't even have clergy, so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I was going to say, because you've mentioned that when you founded at age 19, you were living in Taylor, Texas, and so there wasn't shit out there, at least in terms of a Baha'i community, and you didn't,
Not for lack of trying on the part of other Baha'is, they just couldn't get anything going.
Oh, yeah. Well, is there like
there's no
local
Baha'i
problems, or no one's willing to join, or?
It's not trying to get other people to join per se, because national, like the next level above local, like they'll send out a letter like every few weeks, like just some general information to give us, and like a recurring thing is we shouldn't be focusing on converting people. It should be focused on how we improve the community around us.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, here, let's try talking about the founding of the religion, because you mentioned the founder and his immediate predecessor being the most recent messengers of God. Can you tell us a little bit about when, how, and what the founding of the Baha'i faith was? I mean, no pressure or anything, given that you're the...
Don't worry, I've already been through the study course on this.
Hi.
So it goes back to 1844, which for any Americans who know about history would think of that the year, and they would think of what's known in America as the Great Disappointment and the Millerite movement. But around the world, there was actually and there were movements across the entire world: Christian, Jewish, Zoroastrian, and Muslim. They were all looking for because it was that year in their prophecies, 1844, that corresponds to the Messiah for each religion to arrive in. And so for us, 1844 was the year that the first of the two messengers, the Bab, B-A-B, it translates as the gate.
Okay.
He announced himself to his first follower in April of 1844.
Okay. So to be clear, this is a human being that announced to another human being, like, I'm a prophet. So it's not, so there's, like this isn't, the angel Gabriel. Is it Bob?
The Bob.
The Bob. Thank you.
Well,
said to his first follower, announced that he's a messenger from God, or?
Yes.
All right.
But he did it in a way that was in line with the Islamic prophecies about who they call the Qaim, who will reveal will point towards the 12th Imam, which is the Messiah figure for Islam.
Yeah.
But there is kind of like another story. I've only heard of it. I haven't seen anything official on it, where there was one night where the Bab, his wife, went to go find him in the house. And when she saw him, and this was before his first follower found him, that he was encompassed in a bright white light. And it was just an experience. Like I said, I don't have the full story up
memorized. Yeah.
That wasn't a part of the study course, that story.
Well, I mean, not to sidle back to Christianity, it's just the majority religion around here. But if you ask someone, hey, can you tell the Christmas story? Maybe they'll get it. You tell the Easter story, there's going to be some giant holes, even though theologically it's more important. So that's certainly that. So you were talking about his follower, though, and you said something that struck me as very interesting, because initially it was when he announced himself to his follower. And then you said when his follower found him. So
yes,
talk about
his follower. I believe it was Sheikh Muhammad, or is that I think? Basically, there was a movement basically trying to find the Messiah, and the head of that movement, he passed on, and he instructed his followers. Now, this is in Iran or Persia at the time, and he instructed his followers to go in search of the Qaim, wherever they decided to go, and. This person in particular, he decided to go to Baghdad, I think. And so he spent some time at the mosque there praying and meditating for about 40 days until he received, he just had a thought, something popped in his head to go to the city of Shiraz, which is in southwest Iran. And so when he went to the city, he went with two others. I believe one was his. I forget who they were. Just they were relatives of his, and he sent them to go get a place at the inn, and he'll meet with them later if he, God willing, if he. And so as he was walking around the city, he was approached by a youth about age 25 wearing a green turban, which was a bit significant because to wear something like that, you had to be a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad.
Really? Green. Okay. I didn't know that.
And the Bab, the youth that found him, immediately just greeted him like an old friend, even though they had just met for the first time, and invited him back to his home. And so they went back, and they spent the night just talking. And one of the things that let's just call him the seeker because I can't remember his name at the moment.
Okay, the seeker, yeah.
And so he was instructed that without prompting, the Qaim would write a commentary on the Surah of Joseph, which for us would be the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. And it would be a commentary on that in no style that was used in the contemporary time. And the words would just flow from his pen without hesitation.
Okay.
And so the story goes that that's how it happened in that moment as they were conversing with each other. None of the leaders in the faith, in the Baha'i faith, were really given important positions except for maybe the Letters of the Living, which were the first 18 individuals on their own volition and without being told to would find and accept the Bab and his message.
Okay.
But Baha'u'llah wasn't one of them, and he only became significant because of the way he would speak and how he would speak to people and like his actions and like his mannerisms.
Right. Yeah.
Like he was just revered through that. Like,
okay. So he was reviewed for the way that he was rather than being granted a position of authority or spiritual
yes,
leadership.
among the other Babis.
Okay. And that was I'm assuming that's of the Baha'i movement that preceded it. So when you said the name of the founder of the Baha'i faith. But
Baha'u'llah.
Baha'u'llah. All right. Let's see how much my pronunciation holds up, because it would be Farsi rather than Arabic, presumably.
Actually, Baha'u'llah is in Arabic because at the time there was still an official Arabic was an official language of Persia. Yeah. And so Baha'u'llah in Arabic actually does translate in English to the glory of God.
Okay, cool. So when did Baha'u'llah found the Baha'i faith, and like how did that go?
Well, let's see. In 1850, because it was a 6-year ministry for the Bab until he was executed, so that was in 1850.
All right. So the Bab, he had 6 years of ministering in, you said, what is now southwest Iran in Persia?
He was from Shiraz, but he was like imprisoned and like sent to like a few different prisons across the nation at the time. And I think he was executed in the capital of Tehran.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, I suppose. But, it's been long enough, I guess. So in that 6 years, he was teachings, etc.
Yes.
Are his teachings collected into a work that functions as a holy scripture for the Baha'i faith, or
The ones we have left, he wrote about. It's said that he wrote down 40,000 pages, but so much of it was destroyed by the Persian government.
okay?
But I think the Persian Bayan and the Arabic Bayan are what's left of his writings.
Okay, cool. But there's a portion, and
There's a huge chunk we've lost.
yeah, it's always unfortunate to lose records like that.
Mm-hmm.
But those exist today, and do they function in something akin to Holy Scripture, or?
Yes, it is one of our 3 scriptural sources.
Okay. We're definitely going to circle back to that, but I definitely want to try and get the sort of like, I've forgotten how to say the glory of God in Arabic.
Baha'u'llah.
Baha'u'llah is there, so he's got the Baha'i faith, and he's got some followers, and
he's just, at this point it's still just the Babi movement at the time.
Okay.
So it's still continuing after the Bab's execution.
Okay, and then there's problems with the Persian government is one of the things you were hinting at a bit, at least.
Yes, just like every other religion that starts up, it finds itself to be persecuted by the ruling or the secular and religious forces in charge of the society.
Yeah. Well, this is something new and challenges the established order. So the elements of the established order are not fans generally.
Right.
Yeah. So he has those problems. So what, how does the story continue from there? Or I guess, are there any other like significant moments, spiritual moments, if the word is applicable?
Yeah. So after the Bab's execution, which it was a bit of an interesting story as well. You'll go into that a little.
Yeah, please. So the story of the Bab's execution.
So it was the day of his execution, and he was finishing up his last piece of work with his secretary. And he was just in his prison cell when they came to get him, and he asked them to just wait for him to finish up. They wouldn't let him. They just took him off to be strung up and put in front of a firing squad of 750 soldiers.
They weren't sure whether they were going to get him, right? I was going to say it would probably be cheaper if they just trained their soldiers better and they shoot fewer bullets. But so firing squad of 750 soldiers
of Armenian Christians.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, the colonel in charge of that regiment, he actually didn't want to go through with it, and he asked the Bab, he talked to him, he said, I don't have any problems with you, and he was concerned with whether or not God would even take, if God would take issue with it. And the Bab reassured him that everything will be fine. He doesn't have to worry about anything, just to continue on with his orders.
Okay.
And so, another thing I forgot to bring up is that earlier on in his ministry, when he stated that no harm would come to him until he was finished with his work.
Okay.
So going back to so now the firing squad is set up, ready to go, but also one of his followers is strung up right next to him. So they're both in front of 750 bullets.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So and
this is targets. Well, I mean, what if all 750 choose only one of them? Then, no, sorry.
And this isn't just a story amongst us in the faith. There were also journalists from across the world there to record it.
1850. There's more contemporaneous records than 1250.
Right. So there should be some old newspapers from the Western world that have an article about it. And so as the firing squad, they just got one shot. They all fire. And as soon as the smoke clears, because it was so much smoke you couldn't see anything, not only did all the bullets miss both of them, but they also only hit the Bab's the ropes holding him.
The restraints.
The restraints, and he was just gone from there. And it turns out he went all the way back to his cell to finish up with his secretary.
Before, yeah.
And so then they found him there. And he was like, and then he actually finished everything. And then he went back.
And
Now, the regiment the first regiment, like the colonel, like he just cleared out of there after he saw that no bullet hit them. Like he didn't want to go through with a second time.
Yeah.
So they brought in a second regiment of 750, and that shot like killed both of them.
Okay. So it wasn't, literally no harm would come to him until he was finished with his work. Is that okay? Interesting. Well, that's cool. So is this final work one of the works that survived, or?
Yes, yes, because that was one of the works where he said how much it was supposed to contain, but how much he would put in, how much he would write into it, because the left to be filled in would be filled in by who the Bab referred to as him whom God shall make manifest, who Baha'is believe is Baha'u'llah. And we believe that one of Baha'u'llah's first works, translated into English, the Book of Certitude, finishes up that last work of the Bab.
Okay. So in that you say here's how much, the Bab said there's this, I forget, you didn't say a specific amount, but there's this amount that should go into the final work, and this is how much I will put into it. And the
rest
is based on Baha'u'llah filling in the rest. Is that something that happened with some of his other works, like where he left stuff to be filled in for?
No, the Bab specifically said it would be for that piece alone.
Okay.
Like he didn't say it for anything else.
Okay. Cool. I didn't know whether that was like a thing. That was, like, you finish it.
No, his whole thing, it was just telling all his followers, like, I'm just here to get y'all ready for an even greater messenger. Well, greater as in like the main stuff they're supposed to hear.
Yeah. Okay. So Baha'u'llah.
Yes. And so following that, some of the Babis, they were kind of mad about him getting executed, so they planned an assassination on the Shah, or basically the king of Persia. Yeah. And so after that attempt failed, and the ones who survived went through a horrible dismemberment. Like literally the ones who were caught as they tried to do it got their bodies cut in half and had molten lead poured down their throats and then dragged to the nearest city.
Yeah.
And so even though the movement was already being oppressed, then you could say the government kicked it into high gear, and they just started arresting en masse. And Baha'u'llah, he actually survived being executed because he was from a noble family, and he was supposed to originally take over his father's position in the government, but he refused it because he would prefer to spend his time helping the poor.
What a heretic! No, so the government kicks it into high gear. They're arresting people. Baha'u'llah escapes.
Well, he escapes execution. Well, I mean, he's arrested.
Okay, he's arrested, but avoids execution because he's noble Persian family. Yeah. Okay. So from there, is he still in prison at this point in the story, or?
Oh, this is when his imprisonment begins.
Okay, so it begins, and this is all still 1850, because it was.
Yes, within the year, I think 1850, 1851, because immediately after that, he is taken to an underground prison known as the Sia Chal, or Black Pit. Literally, there's only one opening, and once it's closed, there is no light down there. And it was just originally meant to be an artificial, or just a cistern, a well to put water in, but they just didn't use it for that and just decided to put prisoners down there.
Right, multiple functions.
And he spent 4 months down there. I think there was some international pressure to have I forget why he was released. I want to say something about international pressure, but I'm not sure if that's the right phrase.
Right. Well, I mean, I know what you mean. Like you're talking about like a public outcry, or
I think something from maybe like I said, I don't got it memorized.
Right.
Well, it is a lot more detailed than I'm letting on.
I mean, obviously, but there's how big was the pit? This many feet by that many feet. How many cubits or whatever. No, so he gets released 4 months later?
During the 4 months he's in there is when he receives his message from God to begin his ministry.
Okay.
And so, after the 4 months, and after an assassination attempt down there, because someone tried to sneak poison into his food for one day, but he just smelled it, something's up with this. I'm not eating that.
Yeah.
But 4 months later, he's released, but he has to go into immediate exile and banishment from the country. And the messed up thing about it back then is it wasn't just you; your whole family had to be banished with you.
Okay.
So so they all go to Baghdad after that, which is actually, and then they're there for maybe for at least over a dozen years, because it was in 1863 in Baghdad when he was still having followers coming from all over the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire, and they were going to him in Baghdad. Now, that was right on the border, and the Persian government was just too uncomfortable with him being there, so they pressured the Ottomans to, move him as far away as possible.
Right.
So, his family's trying to get everything ready to go, but they got too many visitors, and so his wife asked him to, do something about it. Yeah. So they're just there to see him. So he decides to go across the river to what is known to us as the Garden of Rizwan, or translated the Garden of Paradise. And so this is where we get what's known as the Festival of Rizwan, because he was there for 12 days, and so it was on the first day when he revealed himself to his followers that he was sent by God to deliver a new message and a new covenant for humanity.
Okay.
And let's see, the 9th day was when his family was able to join him, and that's a bit of a symbol of the unity of bringing together the whole human family, or at least when we the 3 days I'm naming here, the ones that we actively celebrate as holy days.
Okay.
And the 12th one is when they left to go further west. And so they ended up going to basically, it was just this whole long trip to Adrianople, which in Turkey, then down to Egypt, then up to what is now Israel and Akka, the city of Akka.
And so this is where he went, or
this is where his whole family was forced to move to by the Ottoman government.
Yeah.
And so it was actually a prison city they were put in.
Sounds fun. You mean the in Turkey, or
yes, in Turkey, in the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
In what is modern day Israel, Palestine.
Okay, so in the Levant, which was then part of the Ottoman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. And then it just continues to build from there, or? Well, while in the prison city, none of his followers were really allowed to see him in person. Right.
And the story, and there's a bit of a story behind that, where it's there was not really a whole lot of room, so they were kept. His family was kept in an unused set of soldiers' barracks, and one of his. Now this was a couple of decades on. He was in prison straight for 40 years,
basically. Okay.
And so his family was in prison with him, and so maybe a good over a decade, maybe two. His third and youngest son was meditating. Well, kind of there's multiple ways to meditate, and his thing was to walk back and forth on the roof.
Okay.
Well, he fell through, really injured himself, and this is basically going to die at this point.
All right.
And this is the only alleged
miracle, or?
Well, no, not miracle, but Baha'u'llah goes to his son and tells him that he can heal him, but his son decides to refuse and offer up his life for to further the cause, to willingly sacrifice himself for it.
Okay.
And so at the time, like I said, before all this happened, none of the pilgrims or people who wanted to see Baha'u'llah were able to visit with him. And it's only I know it sounds all circumstantial, but shortly after that is when the barracks were being filled with soldiers like a couple weeks afterwards, so they had to be moved. And they were basically they were moved out of the prison city into a house, but they were basically put under house arrest in the countryside, but it allowed the pilgrims to go visit him personally.
Okay, and so from there, you said he was in prison for 40 years?
For the last 40 years of his life, he was basically imprisoned.
Either in the prison city or under basically house arrest in the countryside?
Yeah, basically at that point, it was just straight up house arrest for the rest of his life.
Okay, and so then that's when the pilgrims can visit with him and talk, and he does more ministering and providing a new covenant for mankind, and then his life ends you said in Jerusalem at the end, or?
No, it's in modern-day Haifa.
All right, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know where that is, but...
It's just in northern Israel.
Okay.
Basically, it's on Mount Carmel.
I'm worse with mountains than cities.
Mount Carmel is a holy mountain for all the Abrahamic faiths.
Okay. I take your word for it. But, I have Google for after this as well. Yeah. So from there, is there an edict in the Baha'i faith to spread the faith, or?
It's more to spread the teachings of the faith.
Okay.
I mean, we should clarify that proselytizing is not allowed, whereas as a member, I can't go the only way I can refer to it as Bible thumping.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But coming to us and asking us, and you ask us questions, then that's considered teaching and perfectly fine.
All right. So no door knocking, right? The
basic
corner preaching type stuff.
No street preaching.
Yeah, no street preaching. Yeah, okay. Well, that's cool.
In fact, preaching is straight up banned.
All right.
Like I said, no clergy.
Yeah. So it's like in large part, a kind of ethos and like ethical system of living almost.
Right. Its main focus, or basically only focus, is how to help us improve ourselves and improve the society around us.
Cool.
And like I said, a moment ago where I said alleged story allegedly about him having what could be considered supernatural abilities is because we're actually not allowed to know about any of these so-called miracles he may have performed. Because there is a story about this while in Baghdad one day, some of his followers compiled a book supposedly of the miracles he had performed. Mm-hmm. He looked through it, and then when he was done, he tossed it in the river. Hey. And when they asked him why he did that, he told them that a miracle only means something to someone who witnesses it. It doesn't mean anything to someone who hears about it.
I think I like this guy.
The analogy he goes into is that if you're sick and a doctor comes to visit you, he may fly around and you'll applaud, but you're still sick.
That is an interesting analogy, actually. Yeah. Okay. That much I think I get, because it's not about the miracles; it's about the teachings there. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, in terms of the focus, and you've said there are 3 scriptural sources?
Yes. So, a little bit more, before Baha'u'llah died, he wrote in his will that to lead the faith after him would be his eldest son, Abdul-Baha. Mm-hmm. And it was written down in Baha'u'llah's will that he chose him because he was the only Baha'i to perfectly master his father's teachings. So he was basically he becomes our 3rd scriptural source because he understands the teachings the best.
Okay, and so he had works that he wrote as well.
Yes, he does have it's basically like an expansion onto the teachings of the Bab and Baha'u'llah.
Okay. So Bab, Baha'u'llah, and...
Abdul-Baha. These are all Persian guys.
I was going to say, no Johns in this one, or
Persian
Jerry's.
guys with Arabic titles.
Well, Arabic is ubiquitous in the regionings. So, yeah, well, that's really interesting. So the thing that I want to ask is, when it says a teaching focus on how to improve ourselves and our community, can you touch basically on what some of those ways are? Like, what does it say as a means to improve yourself and your community?
The elimination of prejudice.
All right.
And equality for everyone, regardless of gender, race, nationality, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, equality.
Mm-hmm. Justice, fairness, basically any humanist virtue you can think of. It is supported by the Baha'i faith.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good list. So in terms of improving yourself, what does it say? What are Baha'i teachings about that, if you can get into it?
I mean, I can go off. The best I can do is like list. Okay. I just thought. So one of the ways because it's all voluntary improvement. Like, no one's going to try and force you or shame you into doing anything in particular.
Yeah.
In fact, that is also banned.
I was going to say, this sounds like a faith that doesn't do a lot of persecuting of heretics.
You will not find the words blasphemy, heresy, or apostasy in the average Baha'i vernacular.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
We basically got a revolving door on members.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how large is the Baha'i faith or the Baha'i movement? I don't know which is.
It's just the Baha'i faith now. And at most, I've did the math a couple of years ago on this. By now, according to UN estimates on how many there have been since the last official count and population or growth in the faith, we should be globally at around maybe no more than 10 million. Okay.
So that's not, as far as faiths go, the ones that we're used to talking about, I suppose. Well, I've heard of bigger.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even actually, there's more Hindus than anyone else almost.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So is there like a region primarily where you would find Baha'i?
Not necessarily. It's currently the second most widespread religion on the planet.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does Christianity win first, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sorry. Not a competition. Certainly not between you and I. But so you said second most widespread, and that's just because it's everywhere, or?
Yes, and the faith is meant to unite all of humanity without disaffecting anyone and their culture. It is always encouraged of anyone to bring their culture with them. Like, there is no specific Baha'i culture, even though it started in Persia, and so many Persians around the world have helped to over the last couple hundred years. Help to spread it. But it has a very both specific and a general way to engage with each other. Like, I don't know really how to describe it. Like, it's specific enough to inform us how to interact with each other and how to improve ourselves, but also generic enough to allow anyone from any walk of life to come and be a part of it.
Okay. So it's not specifically like, this is the way that it doesn't have a specific edict on like the correct way of shaking hands that would be different as far as greetings in the United States or Saudi Arabia or Japan, right? So there's not a specific thing, but there's I'm guessing here, an edict that says, say good morning or whatever, or, greet people well, that kind of thing. Not that specifically, but, is that what you mean generally? Like, it's a way of being.
Right. And it's a very, like, you can walk into any Baha'i center and you'll definitely see people from all different backgrounds in it.
Right.
And one of the things that actually makes it, going back to why or how it started, one of the things we are not allowed to do is how to put this, we are not, I should rephrase it as we are supposed to accept all the different messengers of God, because it says that to deny one means to deny all of them, for they all hold the same station.
Okay.
So like Moses, Abraham, Jesus, Muhammad, Zoroaster, Krishna, Buddha, and those are just the ones that have been named to us. Baha'u'llah also says in another part of the scripture, his writings, that there are those that predate what we refer to as the Adamic cycle, which would have started with Adam. That's a whole different, like the Garden of Eden was like a whole metaphor and everything. Yeah. So that predates the Adamic cycle, or basically what would predate post-axial age religions, basically the pre-axial, but there wasn't good enough record, so they've been forgotten to history.
Yeah. Prehistoric, almost, yeah.
And so, but because even though that those are the ones that are named, it's not limited to them, because there is also the tablet to Amir Khan, and tablet is just a reference as a leader addressing one of his followers. Oh, okay. So a follower. This was during the time of Abdu'l-Baha's leadership, where a follower asked him. Basically, we can tell that he asked him about 4 questions, just basically because we see like Abdu'l-Baha responds with 4 answers, so we can guess what the questions were. 3 of them were about the Native Americans, and in a couple of questions, one of the answers that Abdu'l-Baha gives. Amir Khan was obviously asking, like, did they have messengers of God? And Abdu'l-Baha responded with that all people from around the world, regardless of where they're from, or where they have all been sent someone from God to help improve themselves and their communities, and so that really opens it up to. Like the best for anyone watching this, like there's a website, Baha'u'llah.org, and there's actually a long-running series of short articles on this very subject. Okay. And it also like goes into like a couple on Australasian, possible Australasian prophets as well. Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, that was going to be my last question. At least was where can people go to find out more? But Baha'u'llah.org? Yes, that is a bit of a popular website for Baha'is, like just to like it's basically just a site of opinion pieces and like the Baha'i version of TED Talks. Well, I mean, also presumably about the faith as well. A little bit. Yes, it's about the opinion pieces on the faith. Okay, like a little different interpretation on this or that there. Hey. Well, that's cool. But also the straight up, like, if you just want to go find things to read, like entire books on this, there's the Baha'i Online Library. I think it's free to get anything off of there. Oh. I haven't really gone there. So well, yeah, you don't need to go online to learn about Baha'i. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is how I learned about it. Well, originally, I mean, I guess on Wikipedia as well. Well, thank you for coming in. I think that's all the time we have for right now. But and that's Connor Vanecek. God bless America. That's the same way I butchered Vanecek the first time. Yeah. But thank you for coming in, Connor. And I hope that was informative and interesting to the audience. Well, before we head out, sorry. I think we kind of like missed like the main tenets of the faith, like at least to throw those in. That's true. Yeah. Because I was trying to touch on those with the teaching, although I didn't ask. Right. So hit us with some tenets. All right. So what we're told, like this is in Scripture, and it is stated as unity is the pivot around which all the other teachings revolve. So whatever brings unity to anyone is the preferred method to go about doing something. And it's also the most important thing to us because it prevents division in the faith and division leads to sectarianism, and sectarianism leads to violence. And we basically have a straight up ban on violence. There's a straight up ban on holy war. So I can't just like punch you if you piss me off.
Well, that's good to know, because now let me tell you what I really think. Yeah, so unity is the pillar around which all other tenets.
Yes, the pivot around which all other teachings revolve. And so that also, because we're supposed to work towards what we refer to as the most great peace, which will come after the lesser peace.
Right.
So the lesser peace is when when all wars stop. The most great peace is when all prejudice stops. So everyone is like very amicable and friendly to everyone else they meet, and there's no hatred or animosity felt towards anyone else for any reason.
I mean, sounds good to me.
Well, it might be another few hundred years.
I probably won't be here in 100 years. So you said unity. What else is on is that the totality of the list, or?
So it continues, there is only one God which all religions find their source from, and that is the foundation for all religions. Now, I understand, I'm familiar with like the issues with how they all sound so very different from each other. And there's a lot of the facet of dualism in the Baha'i faith, because the one I'm about to go into is there are two sets of teachings for all of the religions: the spiritual teachings and the material teachings. So the spiritual teachings is for us the stuff that never changes, like it continues on, like the love thy neighbor kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the material teachings, those are just the things to help us advance our society forward.
Okay.
And so for us, that is now to, like I said, like to like no clergy, create a one government, a one world government, equality for everyone.
Okay. So wait, is a one world government in there specifically, or is that just sort of the culmination of?
Yes, it is specifically in there, but it has to be accepted by everyone. It can't be forced on anyone. So, like I said, it's all pro-democracy in the faith.
Oh, okay.
Like that's how we choose our leadership at.
Right.
So at the local level, the local spiritual assembly, it's direct by the community. Like everyone just does a secret ballot. Like everyone writes down 9 names, and the 9 people who get the most votes out of that, they become on that assembly.
Right.
And then, now the next level is where it moves into what's known as a fluid democracy, where we are organized into voting units, so multiple cluster or within multiple clusters.
Okay.
And a cluster is just multiple LSAs.
Okay. So it's the cluster votes as one.
No, not the cluster. The unit decides on a delegate to go to national, and then the delegate among all the delegates will decide the 9 people to run the national spiritual assembly.
Okay.
And a similar system is used to choose the head of the faith, which is referred to as the Universal House of Justice. And they do everything that they have to do over in Haifa.
Okay. Cool. So how often are delegates sent to national, actually?
Once a year.
Once a year. Okay. So all 9 leaders of the faith are selected every year. Well,
at the national levels and the local levels, it's a yearly thing. But at the top level, at the highest level, it's once every 5 years.
Okay. So that's the International House of Justice.
Universal House of Justice.
House of Justice. International House of Pancakes. Universal House of Justice.
It was the International House of Burgers.
Oh, okay. Pancakes.
I know it's a lot to.
It's the one true IHOP faith.
No, we're not even allowed to say that either. About the faith, we can't claim any superiority over any other religions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because that's sort of, in a way, denying them, kind of, and they're all in the same station, as you said.
Right.
Okay. I'm getting my head around it. I'm right there with you, Vanecek. Got this.
Hey, you finally got my name right.
Yeah. On camera 3 times. Yeah. Well, the first one doesn't count because it's the first words out of my mouth. We cut it. So that or we've left it in because then it works as a joke. So there's unity and, peace is, I think, how did you describe the lesser and the greater peace?
The most great peace.
The most great peace.
The lesser peace, then the most great peace follows it.
Okay. And is that included in the tenets or?
It is specifically mentioned in the writings of the faith. Mm-hmm. So, I'm going off of like what you could find on the Wikipedia page,
okay.
Basically, world peace is what it'll essentially culminate in, or we hope to culminate in.
Okay. So the tenet would almost be striving towards that is good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's unity, world peace, and then are there more?
Equality for basically everyone.
Equality, right.
The harmony of science and religion.
Okay.
Because it's also another aspect of the whole dualism aspect you keep finding throughout the Baha'i teachings. Now, for us, they are not in conflict with each other because science is how you find the truth of this world, and religion is how you find the truth of the next world.
Okay. So, as a quick aside, when you say dualism, are you talking about mind-body dualism or?
Dualism is that the two aspects to something.
Okay. So there is a specific dualism that you're talking about. Okay.
Well, there are multiple.
Well, I mean, yes. There are multiple dualisms within.
It's a recurring thing.
It's recurring. Okay, that's cool.
And there's a whole lot more stuff we could go into, but I don't think we got time for.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe we'll have another. Oh, wow. Yeah, maybe we'll have another sort of segment recorded. But I think this has been pretty good. Unity and peace to you as well. Thank you for coming in, Connor Vanecek. Glad to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
And I hope that I am Jamie Boone and have been throughout this entire interview. And I hope that was interesting, educational, and somewhat entertaining. Thanks for stopping by.